Most women think attraction is something you put on your face. But what if I told you the most attractive women in the world aren't the prettiest ones? They're the ones people can't forget. They're the ones who walk into a room and suddenly the energy shifts. Conversations slow down. Eyes follow them. Not because they're loud, but because their presence feels dangerous in a way people can't explain. And here's the scary part. Most women will spend their entire life chasing beauty, chasing attention, chasing compliments, and still never become truly attractive. Because attraction isn't makeup. It isn't body shape. It isn't clothes. It isn't followers. Attraction is psychological. It's the way she reacts when she's ignored. It's the way she handles disrespect. It's the way she carries silence like a weapon. It's the way she refuses to beg for love. And once you understand the real signs of an attractive woman, you will never look at women the same way again. You'll start noticing something deeper than beauty, something that most people can't even see. In this video, I'm going to expose the hidden traits that make a woman magnetic, powerful, unforgettable. Traits that make men obsess. Traits that make weak people uncomfortable. Traits that make other women secretly compare themselves. And I promise you this. Some of these signs are so real, so brutally honest, that most people will feel offended, because it will expose the difference between women who are truly attractive and women who are simply trying to be noticed. So don't skip, because by the end of this video, you won't just understand attraction. You'll understand power. Let's start with the first sign, because this is where everything begins. And honestly, this is where most people get it completely wrong. An attractive woman doesn't beg to be chosen. And I don't mean that in some arrogant, cold, emotionless way. I mean it in the deepest psychological sense. Because the moment a woman starts begging for attention, begging for love, begging for reassurance, she is no longer presenting herself as valuable. She is presenting herself as available at any cost. And human beings, whether they admit it or not, are wired to value what has boundaries. This is not about playing games. This is not about acting hard to get. This is about identity. Because when someone has to chase you, they assume you are worth chasing. But when you chase them, you're telling them, even without words, that you don't believe you're enough on your own, and that's the part that people don't want to hear. Attraction is not just about how you look. Attraction is about what your behavior communicates. And when a woman constantly seeks validation, when she over-texts, over-explains, over-gives, over-compromises, she might think she's showing love, but what she's actually showing is fear. Fear of being left, fear of being replaced, fear of not being enough. And fear is not attractive, because fear makes you predictable. Fear makes you negotiable. Fear makes you easy to control. Now let's go deeper, because the reason this matters is not just social, it's psychological. The human mind has a strange habit. We don't just desire what we like, we desire what we believe we might lose. That's why people chase what feels uncertain. That's why people suddenly become interested when someone pulls away. Not because pulling away is manipulation, but because it forces the mind to confront value. And an attractive woman doesn't need to force that. Her energy does it naturally. She doesn't show up trying to convince someone to stay. She doesn't show up trying to prove her worth. She doesn't audition for love like she's standing on a stage waiting for someone to clap. She shows up whole, and wholeness is rare. Most people are fragmented. They're emotionally divided. They want love, but they don't love themselves. They want loyalty, but they can't stay loyal to their own standards. They want respect, but they tolerate disrespect every day just to avoid being alone. An attractive woman doesn't do that. She doesn't beg to be chosen because she already chose herself. And that's what makes her different. When a woman has chosen herself, she doesn't need to convince others to choose her. She's not desperate for approval. She's not starving for attention. She's not addicted to compliments. She might appreciate those things, sure. She might enjoy affection, of course, but she doesn't require it to feel stable. That stability is what people feel. And it changes the dynamic immediately, because the moment someone realizes, wait, she doesn't need me, they start to respect her. And respect is the foundation of attraction. Without respect, attraction becomes temporary, it becomes superficial, it becomes a quick rush that dies as soon as the person gets what they want. But when someone respects you, their attraction becomes deeper, it becomes more intense, it becomes something that stays. Now let's talk about the difference between confidence and arrogance, because a lot of people confuse the two. Arrogance is loud, confidence is quiet. Arrogance says, "Look at me." Confidence says, "I don't need you to look." And attractive women tend to have that quiet confidence. They don't beg for attention because they don't fear invisibility. They understand that not everyone has the eyes to see value. And that is an incredibly mature mindset, because it takes wisdom to accept that some people will misunderstand you. Some people will underestimate you. Some people will overlook you. And instead of panicking, instead of chasing, instead of performing, an attractive woman simply stays grounded. She stays in her lane, and she understands something powerful. The wrong person will always require you to shrink. That's why begging is such a dangerous habit, because when you beg, you are telling someone, "I will lower myself to keep you." And the moment you communicate that, the relationship becomes unbalanced. One person becomes the prize, the other becomes the pursuer, and the pursuer always loses power. This is why attractive women don't chase people who are emotionally unavailable. They don't chase people who are inconsistent. They don't chase people who give mixed signals. They notice the behavior, they register it, and they detach, not because they're heartless, but because they're wise. They understand that inconsistency is not a mystery to solve. It's a message to respect. And let me tell you something, this might be the most important part. When a woman begs to be chosen, she trains people to treat her like an option, because the psychology is simple. People don't appreciate what is constantly available. They don't respect what keeps coming back after being ignored. They don't value what has no boundaries. But when a woman walks away calmly, when she stops chasing, when she stops explaining, when she stops trying to earn love that should be freely given, something powerful happens. She forces reality to show itself, because then the person either steps up or they disappear. And either way, she wins, because she has protected her dignity. And dignity is attractive. Dignity is the kind of energy you can't fake. You can put on makeup. You can wear designer clothes. You can take perfect pictures, but you cannot imitate the energy of someone who genuinely respects themselves. That energy comes from a deep internal agreement, a private promise that says, "I will not abandon myself to keep someone else." And when a woman lives like that, she becomes magnetic, not because she is trying to be, but because people are drawn to strength. They are drawn to certainty. They are drawn to emotional stability. And the woman who doesn't beg to be chosen is signaling that she is emotionally stable. She's signaling that she can handle rejection. She's signaling that she can handle loneliness. She's signaling that she will survive without anyone. And that makes her powerful, because the most attractive thing about a woman is not how much she wants you. It's how much she doesn't need you. Not in a cold way, in a healthy way. And here's the truth. When a woman stops begging to be chosen, she starts attracting the kind of love that doesn't require begging. Because real love doesn't need persuasion. Real love doesn't need chasing. Real love doesn't need constant proving. Real love shows up and recognizes value. So if you take anything from this, take this. Stop trying to be chosen by people who are unsure about you. Stop negotiating your worth. Stop giving discounts on your dignity. Because the moment you stop begging for love, you become the kind of woman love has to earn. And that is real attraction. Here's the closing thought. The world doesn't respect the person who sacrifices themselves to be accepted. The world respects the person who stands firm and says, quietly but clearly, "I would rather be alone than be undervalued." That decision doesn't just change how others see you. it changes who you become. Now let's move into the second sign, because this one is where real attractiveness becomes undeniable. And I want you to listen carefully, because most people misunderstand this completely. Attractive women have standards and boundaries, not preferences, not nice ideas, not a list they wrote on their phone one night when they felt motivated. I'm talking about real standards, the kind that shape how they live, how they speak, and who they allow access to them. Because boundaries are not walls, boundaries are doors, and a boundary simply says, not everyone gets to enter. And in today's world, where people hand out access to themselves like free samples, a woman with boundaries feels rare, almost shocking, almost intimidating. That's why people react strongly to it. Some people admire it, some people hate it, some people call it arrogance. But the truth is simple. Boundaries are not arrogance. Boundaries are self-respect, and self-respect is the foundation of attraction. Here's the psychological reality. Human beings are always watching how you treat yourself. They are always observing what you tolerate, and whether they admit it or not, they take notes. They learn your limits. They learn what you allow. They learn what you excuse. And once they learn that, they adjust their behavior. So if you tolerate disrespect, you are teaching people that disrespect is safe with you. If you tolerate inconsistency, you are teaching people that your emotional stability can be played with. If you tolerate low effort, you are teaching people that your value is negotiable, and attractive women do not do that. They don't need to announce their standards loudly. They don't need to make dramatic speeches. They don't need to threaten. They don't need to argue. They simply live in a way that makes their standards obvious. They don't chase, they don't beg, and they don't stay where they are not valued. That is a boundary. And the reason boundaries are so attractive is because boundaries create clarity. Most people live in emotional confusion. They don't know what they want. They don't know what they deserve. They don't know what they tolerate until it happens, and by then they've already compromised themselves. But an attractive woman is clear. She knows what she expects. She knows what she will not accept. And she knows the difference between a mistake and a pattern. That last part is important because a lot of women stay in situations that slowly destroy them, not because they're weak, but because they keep hoping the person will change. They keep explaining, they keep forgiving, they keep giving second chances to someone who doesn't even respect the first one. And I want you to understand this. Boundaries are not about punishing people. Boundaries are about protecting your future self. Because when you have no boundaries, you are basically saying, I will sacrifice my peace for your comfort. And that is one of the fastest ways to lose yourself. Attractive women don't do that. They protect their peace like it is sacred because it is. Now, some people might hear this and think boundaries mean being cold, being rude, being unapproachable. No. An attractive woman can be warm, she can be gentle, she can be soft, she can be kind. But she is not easily manipulated, and there's a difference. Kindness without boundaries becomes self-destruction. A woman who is kind but has no boundaries becomes the emotional dumping ground for everyone. People take from her, drain her, disrespect her, and then leave her empty. But kindness with boundaries becomes power, because when you combine kindness and standards, you become someone people admire, someone people respect, someone people take seriously, and that respect creates attraction. Because attraction is not just physical, attraction is emotional, it's psychological, it's spiritual, it's the feeling that someone is solid, that they are not desperate, that they are not unstable, that they are not easily controlled. Standards communicate solidity. Now let's talk about something deeper, because this is where most people get uncomfortable. When a woman has standards, she forces people to face themselves. And that's why standards create tension, because when you tell someone no, you are not just denying their request, you are revealing their entitlement. And entitlement is everywhere. Some people feel entitled to your time. Some people feel entitled to your body. Some people feel entitled to your emotional labor. Some people feel entitled to your forgiveness. But an attractive woman doesn't operate from guilt. She operates from principle. She understands that her time is valuable, her energy is valuable, her attention is valuable, and she doesn't hand those things out to people who treat them casually. That is what makes her rare, because most people are afraid to disappoint others. They say yes when they mean no. They laugh at jokes they don't find funny. They stay quiet when they feel disrespected. They stay in relationships where they feel lonely just to avoid conflict. But an attractive woman doesn't fear conflict more than she fears self-betrayal. And that's the key, because every time you tolerate something that violates your values, you betray yourself. And the more you betray yourself, the more you lose your confidence, the more you lose your identity, the more you lose your attractiveness, not because your face changes, but because your energy changes. You become smaller, you become hesitant, you become unsure of your own worth, and people can sense that. Now here's the philosophical truth about boundaries. Boundaries are not just about what you reject. Boundaries are about what you honor. When you say, "I don't accept disrespect," you are honoring your dignity. When you say, "I don't accept inconsistency," you are honoring your time. When you say, "I don't accept half love," you are honoring your heart. And when you honor yourself, other people are forced to either honor you too or leave. That's why boundaries filter your life. They don't just protect you, they reveal who belongs in your world, because the right people will respect your standards. The wrong people will try to negotiate them. That's how you know an attractive woman understands this, so she doesn't waste energy arguing with people who don't respect her limits. She simply removes access. And that is a level of power most people never reach. Now, I want to say something that might sound harsh, but it's the truth. If you don't set boundaries, people will set them for you. If you don't define your standards, someone else will define your value. And that value will always be lower than what you deserve, because the world will always test you. It will test your patience. It will test your loyalty. It will test your self-respect. It will test what you're willing to tolerate. And every test is a question. Do you respect yourself enough to walk away? Do you value your peace enough to say no? Do you love yourself enough to stop explaining? Attractive women answer those questions with action, not words. They don't threaten to leave. They leave. They don't argue for respect. They remove themselves from disrespect. They don't chase people who treat them like an option. They become unavailable. And this is why their presence is so powerful. Because people don't just see a woman with standards. They see a woman with a spine. And that is rare. That is magnetic. That is unforgettable. So if you want to become truly attractive, stop thinking boundaries are something you set for other people. Boundaries are something you set for yourself. They are the line where your dignity begins. And here's the final thought I want you to sit with. A woman with no boundaries will always be available, but never valued. A woman with strong boundaries may be harder to access, but she will never be forgotten. Because the world does not respect what is cheap. The world respects what has a price, and the highest price you can demand is respect. Now let's talk about the third sign, because this one is subtle, and yet it's one of the most powerful forces of attraction that exists. It's the kind of thing people feel before they even understand it. It's the kind of energy that makes someone memorable without them ever trying to be. Attractive women have calm, controlled energy. And I want to be very clear because people misunderstand calmness. They think calmness means someone is quiet, shy, passive, or harmless. But calmness is not weakness. Calmness is not softness. Calmness is not the absence of emotion. Calmness is mastery. It is emotional discipline. And emotional discipline is one of the rarest traits in modern society. Most people are reactive. They are constantly responding to the world instead of leading themselves through it. Someone says something rude and they explode. Someone ignores them and they spiral. Someone disappoints them and they lose control. Their mood rises and falls based on the behavior of other people. That's not emotional intelligence, that's emotional dependency. And here's the truth. Nothing destroys attraction faster than emotional chaos. Because chaos communicates instability. It communicates insecurity. It communicates that a person has no inner foundation. And when someone has no foundation, you never feel safe around them. You never know what version of them you're going to get. One day they're loving, the next day they're cold. One moment they're fine, the next moment they're offended. One moment they're laughing, the next moment they're crying. That kind of unpredictability doesn't create mystery. It creates exhaustion. But an attractive woman is different. Her calmness doesn't mean she feels nothing. It means she feels deeply, but she does not let feelings control her actions. That is strength, because controlling your emotions does not mean suppressing them. It means understanding them. It means observing them. It means choosing how to respond rather than reacting impulsively. And that is exactly what makes her attractive. Because when a woman has control over her emotional world, she has control over her presence. And presence is what people fall in love with. Presence is what makes people pay attention. Presence is what makes people feel drawn in. Now let's take this deeper, because the reason calmness is so attractive is psychological. Human beings are always scanning for stability, even if they don't admit it, even if they pretend they want drama, even if they say they want excitement. Deep down, people crave emotional safety. They crave the feeling that someone is grounded, that someone is secure, that someone doesn't collapse under pressure. So when a woman has calm energy, she becomes a kind of emotional anchor. She becomes someone people can trust, someone people want to be around, someone people feel pulled toward, because her calmness creates contrast, and contrast is powerful. In a world where everyone is trying to be loud to prove they matter, a calm woman stands out like a lighthouse. In a world where everyone is offended, emotional, and impulsive, a woman who stays composed feels almost unreal. And that's why her calmness becomes magnetic. But let's talk about what calmness really looks like, because it's not just about being quiet. It's about being unshakable. It's about being able to hear criticism without collapsing. It's about being able to face disrespect without losing dignity. It's about being able to walk away without needing the last word. Because needing the last word is a sign of insecurity. It means you need to win the moment to feel stable. Attractive women don't need to win the moment. They think long term. They understand something. Most people don't understand. Your reaction is your reputation. The way you respond under pressure tells people who you really are. Not when you're comfortable, but when you're tested. And attractive women pass those tests because they don't let their emotions turn into a performance. They don't panic when someone pulls away. They don't beg when someone becomes distant. They don't throw tantrums to force attention. They don't use drama as a weapon. They don't need chaos to feel alive. Instead, they remain steady, and steadiness is rare. Now here's the part that might shock you. A calm woman is attractive because she makes people reveal themselves. Think about that. When someone is emotionally reactive, they create noise, they create confusion, they create distraction. And because of that, other people can hide behind the chaos. But when a woman is calm, she becomes like a mirror. She reflects people back to themselves. She doesn't overreact, so the other person has nowhere to hide. Their behavior becomes obvious. Their intentions become obvious. Their manipulation becomes obvious. And that's why calm women intimidate certain people, because calmness exposes nonsense. A manipulator needs emotional chaos to survive. They need you to be confused. They need you to be emotional. They need you to be desperate for closure. They need you to chase them. They need you to overthink. They need you to feel unstable. But a calm woman doesn't play that game. She observes, she listens, she watches patterns, and then she decides, and that decision is what makes her powerful. Because a calm woman does not make decisions based on temporary feelings. She makes decisions based on truth, and truth is attractive. Now let's talk about silence, because silence is one of the most underestimated weapons of attractive women. An attractive woman is comfortable with silence. She doesn't talk just to fill space. She doesn't overshare to feel connected. She doesn't explain herself to someone who is committed to misunderstanding her. She understands that words are valuable and that speaking too much can make you lose power. Because the more you talk out of nervousness, the more you reveal insecurity. But when you speak with intention, people listen. And when you stay silent with confidence, people become curious. Because silence creates gravity. Silence makes people lean in. Silence makes people wonder what you're thinking. And mystery is not created by acting distant. Mystery is created by being self-contained. That's what attractive women are. They are self-contained. They don't leak their emotions everywhere. They don't make every mood public. They don't broadcast their insecurities. They don't collapse in front of everyone. They handle their emotions privately with dignity, and that doesn't mean they're emotionally closed. It means they have self-control. And self-control is attractive because it signals depth. Now here's the philosophical part. Calmness is a sign of inner order. When someone is calm, it means they have created a stable world inside themselves. They are not constantly at war with their thoughts. They are not constantly fighting their own identity. They are not constantly trying to prove their worth. And that inner order becomes visible on the outside. It becomes the way they walk, the way they speak, the way they look at people, the way they respond to disrespect, the way they handle rejection. And people can sense it immediately. That's why calm women don't have to demand respect. They naturally command it. Because calmness is the language of someone who knows they will be okay no matter what happens. And that mindset is powerful. So if you want to become more attractive, don't focus on being more interesting. Focus on being more stable. Don't focus on getting attention. Focus on controlling your emotions. Don't focus on being louder. Focus on being deeper. Because the truth is, the world is full of women who are beautiful but emotionally chaotic. And the world is full of women who are smart but reactive. But a woman who is calm, controlled, and grounded, she becomes unforgettable because she doesn't just look attractive, she feels like peace, and deep peace is rare. So here's the closing thought. Your beauty may catch someone's eyes, but your emotional control will capture their respect. And when a woman becomes both beautiful and emotionally disciplined, she doesn't just attract people. She changes the atmosphere wherever she goes.